So MarketMoguls episode 2, and we're back in the building. We
Yes,
were just
sir.
talking, we were talking like crazy before the podcast, but a lot to talk about. It's already March. It's about to be April. Already 4 months into the year,
Already.
and we gotta increase the urgency for ourselves. We gotta breed more consistency for ourselves and the people around us because life is every month, day, and week. It seems like life keeps getting more intense as we get closer to November 5th, and everything, especially here in the United States. But
Heating up.
let's talk
Heating
about
up.
that TikTok thing. Let's talk about
Yeah.
TikTok shop. Let's kind of just jump into that really quick.
All right.
Immediately.
So yeah, we started talking about this before the podcast even started. So I was asking you the TikTok ban. This was huge news, probably like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So how much have you heard about it?
Yeah. So from what I've heard, because I'm very narrow on, I've heard highlights. So I watch a lot of Patrick David.
Okay.
With valuetainment, so I'll catch highlights if I have it in the background while I'm working. But I heard that they're looking to ban it, or I remember originally it was originally to buy it, and then that was fast forward. Now they were trying to ban it from the United States again.
Yeah.
So and then that's the base that I got, and then you're my source.
Yeah, it's actually funny because I didn't hear much about it until I had a bunch of content creator friends that reached out to me and they're like, they're going to ban TikTok. What are we going to do? Because that's a huge part of what we do marketing for influencing. And I started looking into it. So what it started out as was they felt as if the information from TikTok was being funneled to China. So, the average everyday citizen's information is now compromised. Now China's getting all this data. And so that's kind of how it started. And that's why there was this big push from Congress saying, we need to ban this to protect people. So I started looking into it a little bit because what didn't make sense to me, and I want to get your feedback on this, but what didn't make sense to me is why would it just be TikTok that they're going after if that's what they're concerned about? Because you have companies like Temu has blast on the scene with sales. Then you have companies like Etsy and others of these Chinese-based companies that people are using to already buy things. So why TikTok? So for me, being a content creator, I really looked at this because number one, it's my livelihood, but number two, a lot of question marks surrounding it. So what I found out recently, and I just made a video on this, was a lot of this actually has to do with the money side of things. So there's an article that came out a week ago, and it basically said that what Congress fears is the money that's being funneled into TikTok through ads and through the creator fund and through TikTok shop is going as investment into China's military development. And that's really where all of this stems from. Now, they didn't come out and just say that right away. It was all this, your data is at risk and all this other stuff. But when you look back of it, and this is why me and you jive so well, is because finance and marketing, right?
Yeah.
Ties right in hand with the same topic.
Yeah.
So what they're starting to realize is a couple of years ago, there was lawsuit that was brought. I think this was during the last administration, the last presidential administration, but they were already starting to come after TikTok because there was a lot of ad space that was being taken from Facebook and Instagram. And I think it was something like $800 million in a year was being taken away from Facebook and Instagram and going into TikTok for ads. Now, I mean, TikTok has just rapidly accelerated that to the point where I've been able to do the creator fund, and the creator fund, you can make really good money doing it. Where basically, and I don't know how much you know about this, but as a content creator, you can start making ads for other companies. So now you have companies that are basically paying TikTok to say, hey, find somebody to make us ads right now. And then the creator also gets paid too. So they've just taken that idea and expanded on it. And then you look at TikTok Shop, which gained a lot of traction this past holiday season because things on there really cheap compared to Amazon.
Yeah.
So a lot of people were leaning toward that. But then on TikTok, the way it kind of works, it looks like a QVC ad. It's actually really funny. You remember the QVC channel?
Yeah.
Where they'll sell like the bracelets and like all that stuff late night. There's sections of TikTok that look exactly like that, where they'll basically just like they'll pay creators to just wear the stuff and pitch the products and all that other stuff, and then they get a commission for it. So that again is taking a huge chunk of capital away from Amazon. So that's part of it too, is they're realizing, okay, it's taking ad space away from Facebook and Instagram, but it's also taking money away from Amazon. People are starting to go more towards TikTok.
It's taking money from Amazon, but it's cutting out the United States to some degree. Like, okay, Amazon is a big one, but it's cutting them out to the sense of profiting, because we get so many. I guess this, and again, I'm thinking about it based off of what you just told me objectively, but the United States has a lot of products produced from China. So China is basically, instead of you selling our products to go ahead and cut us in on the products you're selling to your people, we're going to sell it to your people with the product that we have. Yeah. And we decide what we want to do with all of the profit as opposed to having you in. So that's a flag right there. That's interesting. Yeah. I don't know how to necessarily, because I'm thinking about like a chessboard. That seems like a better move on the chessboard, just objectively thinking about it. If I, for so long, have been supplying a country with products and services like iPhone, and all the products in between, and all of a sudden we go into a pendulum swing where I don't necessarily need you anymore. All I needed to do is capitalize on your consumers' habits, let alone control the algorithm of the platform your consumers are on. Which
exactly,
that's insane.
It is. It is. But then it goes deeper than that too. So they started looking at, there was a U.S. House report that came out, a U.S. House Committee report that came out, and they're finding that even venture capital firms are investing into China as well. So it's not just TikTok. It's, if there's money to be made in America, you're going to have businesses going after it. That's the whole point of capitalism, is to consistently grow your business and expand your business, and you do it through investment. So they're starting to find that more and more capital is being flooded into China. And again, the fear back of it for the US government is, what is China spending this money on? So I think, to come full circle with this entire thing, I don't think that TikTok is at risk of being banned, but what I do think could come out of this is some sort of regulation for how much capital businesses can actually fund into China. I think that's the route that this goes, because to me, it doesn't make sense for them to just come out and say, okay, we need to just ban TikTok altogether. Because if you're going to do that, you're going to have to ban like Temu, and you're going to have to ban all these. It just doesn't really make sense. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting, because when we look at the marketing side of that, that's huge for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. It's driving a lot of revenue for a lot of people, but it makes you, I don't know, it just makes you think, at what cost? Because as from a big picture, someone's getting compromised, and it seems like the United States, in some shape or form, that us as regular people don't know that the United States knows that could compromise. Because like what? Because that puts us at a devalue of our ranking of the United States to some degree, wouldn't you say?
I mean, kind of. Here's one of the big things that I look at. I think that if you just compare China and the United States side by side, you're seeing it big time in the global economic climate right now. I mean, every country is really struggling with inflation and everything that happened post-pandemic. But all the rest of the countries are really leaning on the United States right now. As hey, we're going to invest into the United States because we need some stability in our specific currency, because everything's collapsing around us. So again, it comes down to investment, right? But when you look at who's being invested into most heavily, it's the United States. And the reason why is because there's a lot of confidence in it. So I think that if you look at them side by side, the United States has a clear advantage. Is China gaining traction? Oh yeah, they're gaining a lot of traction. I would still say they're decently far behind. I think technology-wise, yeah, they definitely have us beat from a technology-wise standpoint. But if you look at, I mean, just the structure of our actual government compared to theirs, that right there is just confidence, I mean, amongst the world itself. Would you rather have a country that is run as a democracy, or would you rather have one that's run as China's run, where China's government pretty much controls all commerce? They control, pretty much almost everything, including media streams, things like that. So I think that there's a whole difference. So I always look at it as, we got to look at the money of all of this, because that's what makes you able to import export goods. That's what makes you be able to sustain your, society. And that's what helps you build and grow and, capitalize on what's going on right now, invest in technology, things like that. So it all comes back down to money.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just look at it right now, I think that, is it a genuine concern? Yes. But is it as big of a concern as they're making it out to be? No. And I think that the reason why they're making it that big of a deal is what you touched on earlier. We're getting close to November.
Interesting.
So
no, and it's so interesting this time is going on because I all of this ties into some form of politics and left and right, and so the past 2 years has been the most I've consumed of trying to get understanding. The more it's been where you try to ignore it, the more it's like, hey, there's more relevant things that affect your day to day or could potentially affect your day to day where you can't help to not get some information on it. Otherwise, you're gonna actually get hit in the face and not even realize it to some degree, whether it be literally or figuratively. But no, this is when it comes to the TikTok shop, that's a good point as far as where the money's going. Because for me, I've heard of it and I've been doing more and more research on it, but it's something that business owners need to really think about as they need to pay attention to where the attention's at. Like I was watching Stephen A debate with Patrick David yesterday. They did an episode yesterday, but Stephen A said verbatim, I just had a video made where he was talking about, if I make content and I don't pay attention to what the consumer is saying and the paying customer is saying, and they have options, they're going to go elsewhere. So this is this is a big lesson for a lot of people that have money to invest into advertising. They need to not only invest in marketing, invest into management, all these different things, but they need to pay attention to where people's attention is at. And so TikTok is another element of a lot of people still underestimate. And they need to do their due diligence to maybe put their hand in the fire. And when the term, I said in the hand, that doesn't sound right what I'm trying to say. They need to put their hand in the pond in terms of seeing how they can monetize and help add that additional revenue. Because again, I work with a lot of local businesses, a lot of people that have tangible products or services, and they've built it on traditional, as far as traditionally, but these are modern things that need to be constantly monitored, because you can never have too much knowledge of how you can tell your message, tell your story. I just watched Jake Paul. Have you seen Jake Paul's documentary?
I haven't.
I just watched it, but the way they put it together was massive. But he says something along the lines of everything's a storyline, and the people's attention, the people's engagement is where everything's at. Like, and then you can make anything a storyline. You can make anything and everything 100%. A storyline, and up to the point where it's like the news. Like, why aren't you broadcasting how your business is functional, how you're operating on a day-to-day basis, just like the news? The news is always telling you when the weather is, what the good story happened, what bad story happened, what holidays are coming up, and they tell that same story 4 to 5 times a day, 7 days a week, if not 6 days a week, depending on what state you're in. But why aren't they doing that? We want you to be on the offensive, because what you're telling me, it's putting me on the offensive to get more education of not only understand how TikTok is operating, but how it affects us at a bigger scale than just when it comes to a profitability standpoint. Like, how does it affect us as a country? How does it affect us? Because like I've always been in my own bubble to some degree. And so with this, I don't know, the past couple of years has definitely been like an eye opener where you can't ignore what's outside the bubble right now, regardless of whether you're, what party you're in or what you believe in. Yeah. It just feels that we need to collectively move together, because it's bigger than just one individual. I think what we talk about is it's a collective. How can we move together as a collective, as a people, as a business, as a unit? And we have to move away from that individuality of, okay, I need to look out for myself, but how can we complement each other as far as a bigger force collectively? Does that make sense?
It makes it, yeah. No, and that I'm tying all this in like internally right now with what you're saying, but a lot of this is based on like fear. And unfortunately, that's what we see a lot in media right now. I had a conversation with a buddy of mine and we were talking about TikTok and he's like, oh no, they should definitely ban TikTok. And I'm like, really? Now, obviously I'm the creator, so I want to hear the consumer side of it too.
He said, go more.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, go in. Like, tell me about it right now. Tell me how you really feel, right?
It's like, wipe out my 100K followers.
Yeah, exactly. Just take it all the way. It's all good. It's all good. I built it either way, but
exactly one way or another.
Right. So we're talking about it. And I want to hear his opinion of it because obviously, you know, being on the other side of it, I want some perspective of this. Like, what do you see that I don't see? Because what I see is this has created a great livelihood for me. I've been able to inspire people and help people and like genuinely follow my passion because of it. But he's got kids and his kids are glued to this thing all the time. Like, and he used the example of TikTok, but I'm sure it happens with, you know, Facebook and Instagram, whatever, Snapchat, all that stuff. And what he was saying is that a lot of times the algorithm will figure out, you know, here's what these kids are watching, and it could be negative things, right? So naturally the algorithm picks up on they're watching negative things, whatever it may be. And so that's what the information that's being given is. And so that was his rationale behind it was, well, you know, how can we protect the kids? And I totally understand that. But on the same token, you have people out there that are using it for good things. Like there's this video I sent to him. It's been just flooding my timeline where this random guy, I don't even know what his name is, but love his message. He will literally go to public places like Walmart's or Target's, or he was just at Disneyland. And all he'll do is go up to random people, not even say a word, just have his arms out and hug people. And like people will go up and hug him. You know what I mean? And it's like a loving embrace. And that's what we're talking about for like what the world needs right now. It's this space of like, if you notice negativity, you're only going to see that. But if you recognize positivity, you're only going to see that too. So it's yin and yang for social media. It's like you can't ban TikTok because what's on your timeline is only negative. Like, yeah, it's an algorithm. It's figured it out.
Every platform has an algorithm, and it really just makes you think because it makes you think, how do you navigate in the world of today? Because my brother, he just had a daughter last year. She'll have her second birthday this year. So it's stuff that we talk about all the time because she's in a realm where when I was in high school, when I was, you know, a young one, internet wasn't necessarily prominent in my life. But when MySpace came out, I was, I don't know, 10, 12. And then, you know, Facebook came out. That was when the era of social media became part of my life. And then I say by high school, we got iPads the last year when I was a senior. And then now the year after that, they threw away all the books. And now it's imagine going down a hallway now in 2024 of a high school or even an elementary school where there's some parents that just give their children iPads, or there aren't regulations. Or if you are someone that has children and you don't want to give them a phone, and they go to school and then they have a question of why can I or can I not get on the phone, or why is there a regulation on it? It's like, how do you address that? Because that's where it starts in terms of where people come from, because the information is just as powerful, positive as well as negative, because I see all the positivity, and then there's also a lot of negativity that leeches on to, I guess, part of you that, you know, is curious of what that negativity is. Like, what does that roadmap look like? And it's being written every day. There's not a prescript to it. So it just makes you think, like, how do you, like, what's the navigation of it? I'm sure there's more than one way, but that is the biggest question, because are people leaving when it's time to do something together? Are you just leaving the iPad or phone with your children, or are you doing things manually together? Like for me, I like to build puzzles. I like to make puzzles. Or
I haven't done one of those in a while. I need to.
Yeah, just build something, assemble something. For me, I like to make an intent to do things more manual, because my job is to be on social and give consultation to people of how to use it, and I got to see what the trends are. Like for you, I'm learning what TikTok Shop is, and if anything, why didn't you know about TikTok Shop? Like that's the thing. I've been doing social media marketing for 7-8 years, but things are always changing, and there's always something new, and there's always
Right.
something leaving, and it's like that's the pro and con of it. I have to constantly stay sharp, and the same thing when it comes to people that are consuming things. You have to lean to be more sharp, because otherwise we're leaning right now to a Wally society. Have you seen Wally?
I have, yeah.
Like, that's the scary thing right now. It's a
Mhm.
Wally society where everything is it's just in our face. Have you tried the VR mask yet? Like, I've been thinking about doing it, but I haven't done it yet. But as a marketer, a lot
Yeah.
of stuff is gonna be in people's faces
So
pretty
I
soon.
actually thought it was a really terrible idea for them to do it. And then I was a mechanic for years. And I saw this video on social media of this guy that's working on his car.
Hmm.
And as he's working on his car, he has YouTube pulled up on his glasses. So he's working on his car, and then he'll stop working on it, press play on YouTube to see what's the next step. And so he has this over here, and then he's got like the manual of the car over here. And I'm like, if I had that when
You're
I
like,
was a
bro.
mechanic, dude, I would have charged so much. It would have been ridiculous. But
Yeah.
it's the pro and con thing. Life is a yin and yang. You can't have the good without the bad, because the
Yeah.
bad is where you learn lessons from. So I've learned to take that as there's no such thing as negative, because when what you think is negative happens to you, it's really just a lesson that you need in order to grow. And I think that's where we're at as a society. Even if we go back to the conversation we just had about TikTok, yeah, there's a lot of money that's being flooded into China right now. But we can also learn a lot from this from a marketing standpoint, and obviously regulation's going to come in. We're going to adapt as a society. This isn't going to be the collapse of a society because we're starting to fund, the military complex for China. Like, the world's not going to come to an end because of that.
Hmm.
No, what we're going to do is we're going to realize, okay, we don't like how this is playing out right now.
Hmm.
So we're going to put safeguards into it. And so
Yeah.
I think more than likely what's going to happen is we'll see regulations with that. But this is the same thing that, going back to our conversation on November, that politicians campaign on. And this is directly correlated with money too. And this is why, for me, back at the last election, I got really deep into it, because what I've realized is that when you talk about politics, doesn't matter if it's left or right, it's all funding. Who's getting the most funding? Because who's ever getting the most funding is going to be the one who gets the most push on social media. They're going to get the most push from the media. They're going to get all sorts of, donations flooding in, all this other stuff. And money buys more, space, more FaceTime, all that stuff. So, I look at that, and we see a lot of campaigning on fear. You'll see it with, all the stuff happening with, schools and, gun control and all this other stuff. And at the end of the day, they'll talk about it, but you'll never see a solution to it. And the reason why you won't see a solution to it is because if they figure it, I think they know what the solution is to half this stuff. But if they solve the problem, now how are they going to get funding? What are they going to campaign on? Because what pushes people to action is fear.
Hmm.
That's just basic psychology. You can tell people everything's great, and if everything's great, they're not going to move. They're not going to change anything. Society isn't going to change if you tell them everything's great. But if you tell them, hey, your house is on fire, they're going to run out and try to put out the fire. So it's like, I think the political system has become that, where it's like, we'll talk about a problem, but we really don't want to solve the problem. Because if we solve the problem, what do we campaign on?
See, and that's another thing I think we're compromised is in general, where no one wants to entertain a solution. And for me, my mind is hardened to just operate looking for the solution,
Yeah.
because again, my biggest saying is progression is the only obsession. It should be the only obsession, because to live a life as if there's not going to be another adversity in your life is very, that's very misinformed, and you're setting yourself up for failure. Whether you lose a loved one, whether you get screwed in a business, whether you get hit in the arm, whatever the case may be, your children go through a hardship, you have to face that. It's not even necessarily a if that's going to happen, but how prepared and how are you going to address it, and when is it going to happen? Like Jim Rohn, what does he say? He said, "Don't wish it was easier." He said, "Don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better."
I love it.
I've listened to that clip too.
I was going to say, how many times do you listen to that to
lot.
have it down like that?
YouTube. Shout out to YouTube.
Shout out.
Shout out to YouTube.
Shout out to YouTube.
No, just that is my mentality. Because again, all this stuff's so new to me, and it's like I don't really have a lot to say on it on politics, as far as I don't speak from a sense of I have the answers, but more so curiosity. That's why I'm getting more insight from you, because it seems like you dive dove more deep into the as far as how everything's working in detail,
Yeah.
and it's connecting a lot of dots for me as far as into my world. Because for me, my life is 100% advertisements, and it's so interesting for me. Like one thing a lot of people are struggling with is hiring. Like I'm on
Hmm.
several, I'm like on dozens and dozens, if not 50 different Facebook pages and Instagrams on my personal, where and a lot of people are struggling to hire people, or they're having a high turnover rate. And that's the thing that I wanted to, I guess, segue and tag into, is to what people can do and how people can create a culture where people want to stay. Like I was talking to, we had a meeting at the Optimum where we just sit and talk with people and ask them where they're stuck at, where they're limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about hiring, but nobody's talking about hiring in the sense of having a place that people want to stay. Like so that's a lot of things that a lot of people are compromised on, and they can't successfully do. There's very few people that actually have a facility in a place that they want to stay. Because think about it, every time I've worked somewhere, there's somebody always shopping for the next
Hmm.
opportunity. And why, like, what's the missing piece for somebody to want to actually stay somewhere? Like back in the 70s and 80s, where people were building to actually work somewhere for 7, 5, 10, 15, 20 years for the rest of their career until they retired. Like a lot of businesses are missing that.
Yep.
and and so what are people missing? What do you think people are missing in that sense, from your perspective, of course?
So I think what people are looking for is they're looking to just be themselves, be accepted, and feel like they're a part of something.
Mm-hmm.
People don't want to feel alone. That's why we're seeing a lot of the mental health stuff that we're seeing right now. Is people just feel like nobody can hear me, nobody has my situation, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's why me and you talk about content so much in the way that we do, is because people think that their situation is unique. Like nobody else is going through this right now. Nobody can relate. Nobody can, but that's not true. There are hundreds, if not thousands of people that are going through what you're going through. And we live in a society where I think that being vulnerable is looked at as a negative thing when it's actually a really powerful thing. It takes a lot of courage for somebody to be vulnerable, to come out and say, hey, here's who I am. This
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm about. I struggle with certain things and I'm okay and I accept that, because even though I'm struggling with it now, that doesn't mean that's who I am. It doesn't define me, and it's something I'm going to work through. And I think there's a lot more courage in saying that than there is just keeping it bottled up inside, not saying anything,
Mm-hmm.
because people really want to just feel like, okay, like I'm accepted here. I enjoy what I do here. I feel like I'm heard here, and I feel like I'm a part of something. When you feel like you're a part of something, you want to contribute. You want to give more.
Right.
You want to add that value to whatever it is. But if you just feel like you're another cog in the wheel where you're not heard, nobody really cares, I'm not able to be authentic, anything like that, people don't want to, invest more into something where they don't feel like they're being invested into at the same time. So I think this ties pretty closely in with money too, is it's an exchange of value that businesses really should be looking at. And it's not just an exchange of value from a monetary standpoint. I think that it doesn't matter if you're talking about an exchange of value through energy or time or money or, some sort of different means of compensation or whatever, but it has to be an equal exchange. You have to create a win-win type situation for the company and the employee. That's what people are looking for. Do I feel like I'm in a win-win situation where I'm giving this my all, but I'm being reciprocated in a way where whatever's important to me, that need is getting filled? And I think that's where there are pretty big differences in companies that thrive and companies that don't thrive. I mean, I've worked for a couple major banks. One of them I worked for a while. Culture was so off. I mean, you
Yeah.
could feel it. You're
Yeah.
in there and you're like,
I've been there
you
as
feel
well.
like you're helping, the clients that come in. But as far as a culture, you don't feel like you're helping the company. You don't
Dude,
feel like you're a part of it at
just
all.
just on that alone, like I'm sure you can relate to this, where you are in an organization, you're responsible for some form of customer accommodation
Yep.
or sales, and the client or potential client gets to you, and then they feel great, but they go on to the next phase of the process, and they have reflection. They have an experience that doesn't reflect what you told them, but you don't have any control over it.
Yeah.
You're like, bro, like I'm sorry, like I tried, bro. It's like, damn, like
Well,
that happens
that's
too
big
often.
and that's big in finance too,
Yeah.
because what is finance based on? It's based on money. So in a lot of cases, they don't so much care about the customer. I just made a video on TikTok actually about how the banking system works. Have you gone into any sort of like how all that stuff actually works?
I've gone through the Real Rick Doyle.
There you go.
Bro.
There you go. So on a basic level, it's actually, this frustrated me once I figured it out. So think about what happens when you put money into a bank. So let's just say you're putting it into a regular checking account. And for you as a customer, you're like, okay, I'm getting some benefits here. I got my debit card, I got my Apple Pays, I have access to loans. I have access to, bankers and credit cards and all that other stuff. So there are certain benefits that you're going to get. Now, what the bank does with that money, let's say it's $10,000 that you just got paid, right? What the bank actually does with that money is they immediately loan that money out in the form of personal loans, mortgages, credit cards, things like that. And then they charge, we'll just say on a credit card, the average credit card is 22% right now. Mm-hmm. So they're getting 22% back on that $10,000. How much money is Sean getting from that $10,000? Because technically that was Sean's money that he just put in. How much is he getting for that?
Nothing, is it?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. So they're getting 22% on the money that you earned. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think this is what's interesting when you start looking at finance, because I think what may happen moving forward is you're going to start to see more peer-to-peer lending, where it's like you're acting as your own bank. So like, for instance, let's say that you need a loan. Instead of going to a bank, you could come to me and be like, hey, I need $10,000. Cool. I'm going to give you $10,000 and then you pay me back flat interest. It's not going to be as high as like a bank is. Maybe it's only 3 or 4%, but it's a win-win for both me and you, because guess what? We don't need the bank anymore. Yeah. It's like, hey, I'll give you this money. Instead of you paying 22%, just give me 3%.
And that's why crypto is an attractive. Give a comparison on that.
So, so this is one of the reasons why they've gone after crypto as hard as they have. And they've used a lot of fear to tell people don't invest into crypto because it's a scam and things like that. At the same time,
it's been spiking.
It's all, one of the big reasons why I figured this out actually was we saw a huge spike from 60 to 70,000 because companies like BlackRock and Vanguard just bought $300 million in Bitcoin. Now, here's the question that needs to be asked. The media has been telling people don't get involved in cryptocurrency. It's a scam. Yet at the same time, that same government is allowing the two biggest wealth investors to invest into it. If it was really that big of a scam, wouldn't you be concerned with the customers for BlackRock and Vanguard and not allowing them to invest into it? But that's not what's happening. So you're going to start to see more regulation come into cryptocurrency, because cryptocurrency, what it is being used for is peer-to-peer lending, where there are certain platforms out there that I have some of my crypto right now that's paying me upwards of 10% just for leaving it in the exchange, for that exchange to lend out to somebody else in the form of a credit card or some sort of, investing or whatever. So I'm actually making money on the money that I've put in. So I'm acting as my own bank. I'm cutting out the intermediary. But I mean, we're in a capitalist society. So do big banks like that? Of course not.
And you talking about the media. So the media is saying one thing. All I can think about while you're saying the media is telling you one thing, but also there's people that are they're disregarding the media, and they're making a decision. It just makes you think, because somebody understands that what you're forecasted or broadcasted, you're going to be influenced to make some decision or no decision, or a mass majority, or at least attempting to. Right. So it should let people know, if you're listening to this, what you consume has an influence of how you think to some of the decisions you make. Now it's even at a all-time high. Just for me, I can only think about the contrast of where you were from the 30s and 40s, where it was just radio and newspaper, to billboards, to now, people are consuming, like every time on Sunday, you got an iPhone, it'll tell you your watch time, how much content are you consuming on all those platforms that are influencing how you make decisions. Going into November, what decisions are you making? Like making a decision based off of what you've been fed, or making a decision because you've done your research on both sides? Because like the whole crypto scenario, they're telling you not to invest, but meanwhile, some of the biggest organizations are dumping money in. Like objectively, regardless of which way you sway, is that should tell you something is up.
And I look at the AI space as well. is
yeah, let's talk about that.
they
Yeah.
oh man, this is gonna be
Yeah.
good. Let's dig in a little bit. So
Yeah.
I remember you telling me about AI.
I remember at the time
I,
you were like, I haven't dove into it yet. And
I
that
have
was a
I
year
have
ago
no idea what it
now.
was.
Yeah.
So here's what I've started to look at for media and when I consume media. What are they pushing from a fear standpoint? Because whatever they're pushing, I'm probably going to invest into it, to be honest. Because they did the same thing with crypto, and now they're doing the same thing with AI. Is, we got to be careful with AI. AI is advancing too quickly. Robots are going to take us over, all this other stuff, right? So people are like, a lot of people are looking at this at face value and going, okay, like we need to pump the brakes on AI. Meanwhile, you have record profits going on right now in NVIDIA, in Intel, in AMD. So if you're able to see through that and you don't just buy it at face value and say, oh, this is horrible, this is terrible, like let's put an end to it, you could have just generated some serious wealth for yourself. Because I think I bought NVIDIA at 135 a share when they first really started pushing the fear thing of AI is going to take us over and all this other stuff. I'm looking at that and I'm like, I'm laughing internally because I'm like, I'm watching this happen in front of me because it's all a money game. The whole thing's a money game.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it and I'm laughing. As that's happening, I'm dumping money into NVIDIA. Well, what's it at today? It's at 1,100 in a year and a half. That's you would have 10 extra money in a year and a half if you didn't listen to them. But that's the stuff too at the same time. And now you have, unfortunately, I think that people are just now starting to wake up to crypto and Bitcoin and things like that. And I really only stick to like Bitcoin and ETH. There's a lot of meme coins out there. I know people play meme coins. We're not going to talk too much about that stuff.
Yeah, because that's people are doing Alvaz and there's a bunch of other
all
stuff,
that stuff.
I'm just doubling down on what I know. I know marketing, and there's tools that I use, AI and crypto.
Yeah,
there's a few.
Stick to what you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Just stick to what you know.
Just doubling
There's
down
just
on
way
that.
too So, but it's the same thing with that, and I think people are starting to get into crypto now, but not enough people are, and there's a lot of money to be had in crypto too. Like, crypto works totally separate than the US dollar does. One of the reasons why we fell into huge inflation is because during the pandemic, what we were doing was just printing off a bunch of money. Well, what happens when you have an overabundance of anything? The value of it goes down. That's what happened with the US dollar. The difference in cryptocurrency is there's a finite number of crypto. That's why it keeps going up. So you have the media telling you crypto's bad, we shouldn't be investing into it.
Right.
Meanwhile, all the big players that are making a lot of money are investing into it, and there's a finite number of it. So as they're buying it up and you as the consumer are staying away from it, it's getting harder and harder for you to get your hands on it. And the price of it's just going to keep going up. But if you don't see the connection with that from a monetary standpoint, this is what they prey on. They prey on the fact that you're not going to do the research.
Yeah. And you saying this, all I can think about as this time goes on, because all I've been doing when I talk to business owners is we have to, all I can think about is we have to invest back into local businesses and local communities. And this is why I'm so passionate about it, because there's so many people that do agency work and they're in my field and, they want to make money. Of course I want to make money doing what I do, but there is no bigger purpose into doing it. And so for me, I always say my biggest theme this year is demand more in 2024. And so all the stuff that you're talking about, whether it be crypto, whether it be AI, the things that are being fueled in a software or a resource or tool aspect needs to be looked at of business owners of 2024 if to be able to reinvest back into their community and most importantly thrive during any amount of time. Because again, I always talk about 2020, 2008. I don't know if that's going to happen again or how soon. I don't even think it's never if it's going to happen, but more so when. And so these tools that you're talking about, those that are proactive on it and they use it in their marketing, in their processes, in their systems, how they accept currency, is what's going to help them stay and thrive, as opposed to, I think in 2020, 34% of businesses that were operational shut down when the COVID happened.
Yeah.
And so all I can think about is how can people be in the best situation where they're on the offensive versus on the defensive, because people hear this and like, okay, great. Like, what does this mean to me? So at least on the business side of things, this can very well mean whether your business is, open or not open within the next 6 to 12 months or beyond.
Right.
Like, it's not just people are always going to be there. Now people have choices. Before, there was one or two choices back in 1950s, 1960s, 1990, even early 2000s. But now people have 5, 10, 15, 20 options of the same products or service that you have. And you got to pay attention to what your consumers are saying. And what are your competitors doing? Are they staying the same, or are they innovating and investing into different tools that make it an easier or better experience for the consumer? Or is there still a lot of friction, but you're still being stubborn about, I'm not going to change?
Right. And that not fearing what's happening right now is the big thing, is adapting to it. I've been talking to my community, the Money Circle, about this for probably 2 or 3 years, especially when they really started ramping up the AI thing. Because with AI, one of the things that happened, I think this was like a year and a half ago, but California started raising the minimum wage. And I think the minimum wage there is like $20 an hour or something like that. And everybody in California is cheering. And I'm looking at this subjectively, and I'm like, okay, like, this is good. Like, I want people to be able to earn more money, but at the same time, from a profit standpoint, this is going to eat away at the profits of the company. And at the end of the day, we're in a capitalist society. So if we're in a capitalist society, how can that business earn more money while having to pay extra money for, their employees now?
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately after that happened, this was probably like 6 months after, you started to see them start replacing workers with AI.
Yeah.
And it was like, you have to adapt to this stuff. Like, yes, that sucks that a lot of jobs are being replaced with AI. Like, even financial advisors are being replaced with AI. But also at the same time, there's huge opportunities for people as well if you don't fear what's going on and you adapt to it. Because now there has never been a better time for you to monetize a skill that you have. It has never been easier than ever, than it is right now. I get emails. I will literally wake up to probably 6 or 7 emails a day from my content that I put on TikTok of businesses that want to work with me about, hey, we'll pay you X number of dollars to pitch our product, or, we'll pay you per view or whatever. And that's just an example of creating content. You don't even have to do that. I mean, you can make money doing anything, but really just figuring out, what's my passion? What is it that I want to be able to do and monetize? Because with the technology that's being put out there, with AI, with everything going on with the different social media platforms and all this, it's never been easier for you to monetize a skill. And if you think that these big companies won't replace you for profits, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And it's the fact of the matter. They will replace people in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So how can you take what's going on right now and take the lesson from it and say, okay, I'm not going to be at cause of this. I'm not going to be somebody that's impacted by this. I'm going to use this to my advantage to create something for myself, because the only thing that is going to be consistent is what you can create. If you're depending on somebody else for your livelihood, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, we got to transform ourselves. Again, all I can think about is we have to transform ourselves to have different and dynamic skill sets to do that. Because I remember when I first walked through the airport and I saw a McDonald's, I think it was like not Minnesota. I forgot which airport it was. But I walked through, I think it was an airport in Texas, but you saw McDonald's with their own self-serving checkout line where you just go up to the screen, and then it's just people serving. The last part that's optimized is just people serving the food and giving them food, as far as actual people doing it. But there's not even cashiers. It's just like as if you were to go to Safeway and then you go into the self-checkout line, but they now have that as a regular thing for restaurants now. And that's something that's been talked about for quite some time. Even at like Dollar Tree, there's a Dollar Tree at Desert Ridge. If you're Five Below. If you go to the Five Below in Desert Ridge, they're a self-checkout where the people there are just there to make sure, I guess, you don't steal anything or make sure the machines are working. But there is no cashiers anymore like you were to go to a Dollar Tree or a regular store anymore. So it just makes you think. Because even for me, like I'm in marketing, so I'm always trying to be on the cutting edge or the authority of this information, so I can give people, especially people that I work with that come from traditional businesses, to help them include these modern tools. Because it's not necessarily a tool that's going to save your business, but it will make things more efficient, more effective, and most importantly, reduce the friction. Because that's the biggest thing in that case when it comes to working with service-based businesses, is a lot of customers or consumers have friction, and if they can have that reduced so they can receive said product or service, that makes their job easier. But
Yeah.
how, like, not even how, it's just if we could be on the cutting edge of challenging ourselves, then a lot of the opportunities will come out of it. Because I don't know if I will ever have a realm where I'll retire. Like, I think that was a regular thing that we talked about as our parents and we heard our older relatives retirement. But what is that? What does that look like? There's a lot of places that don't talk about that, like Living to 100. If you go on Netflix, there's that show, and there's a lot of places that people are living from 100 to 110 years old or 90 years old, and retirement isn't the thing. They have a very the life is moving in some degree. It's never a stationary or this is the end or this is done.
This is the end.
That's what I'm saying. Like, a lot of people talk like it's the end. And so I think for us as a people, especially in the United States, all I can speak on the United States, because that's where I live, is where we have to stray away from convenience. We have to leverage it and use it, but we also have to do the things that are manual that's going to sharpen our sword, because just like any sword you use, it will become dull. It will become dull, and it's our job to make sure our knife is sharp in every realm. How we speak on podcasts, working out, building the money circle community, whatever it might be. And if we can do that where our skill sets inside the home, going back to that conversation of that individual that said that wanted to ban TikTok because he has children, how is he sharpening the sword of his children, of letting on himself, in order to be the example and have the skills to be a better parent, but also have skills that will land him into another opportunity or a career.
Right. Well, I think a big positive to that, and what I'm starting to see a lot more of, is a lot more networking and community.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be huge. That's going to be a massive game changer, because with community and networking, there's a lot of growth that comes from it personally, but then also opportunity too. So if you put yourself in an environment, there was that old saying, I've heard it a million times from different motivational speakers, but you're the average of your 5 best friends, right?
Yeah.
So the income that they make, what are they doing? What's the lifestyle look like? How healthy are they? Things like that. Who are you surrounding yourself with? Because you're going to be a product of that. If you're somebody that's sitting there being a consumer, buying everything that's going on in front of you on screen, but you're not immersing yourself in an environment of people that are growing, doing things in whatever avenue it may be, then you're going to stay the same. And what does your life look like at that point? Are you happy with where you're at right now? Are you satisfied? Is there things that you want that aren't there for you right now? What does that look like? You have to get real with yourself. Yeah. And that's actually a good spot to be. That's that vulnerability thing.
And disclaimer, if you are happy where you're at, this conversation isn't relevant to you.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. And being vulnerable even with yourself, right? Yeah. Of getting real and saying, hey, based on where my life is right now, am I satisfied with it? If it is, awesome. 100% keep doing what you're doing. You're on fire, stay on fire. But if you're somebody who's looking at it and you're like, well, this could be better, or I could be in better shape, or I could be better financially, or what have you, that's a fantastic place to be, because first and foremost, you're asking the question of yourself.
Yeah.
What is going to make me satisfied? What is the next thing I'm going after? And then once you have that answer, now you can find people that are looking for that same thing. And that's where community comes in. And I think that's the transformation that I'd personally like to see in businesses, small or big, is really that community environment of people that have a common mission, that are able to be vulnerable, that are able to, say to themselves, there's things that I'm working on, and I'm surrounding myself with people who have the same active goal as I do.
Yeah.
And I think that's why the money circle has grown as much as it has, is it's people who understand that they don't know what they don't know, and we're all at different levels, and there's no judgment to it.
Yeah.
It's very much a, hey, I'm okay asking this question financially, because people don't like to talk about finance. I get it. I was somebody who, growing up, I didn't have money. I hated talking about money. It was hurtful looking back at, Thanksgiving and Christmas, realizing that we just did the best that we could. So it was very being vulnerable about it was really difficult. But when I immersed myself into a culture of people, and goes back to the Vima thing of people who were successful with money, I started to realize that it was okay.
That was our first dose. I remember it was a crazy high. Yeah. That no one understood. I'm like, if you just came to a meeting, you would understand.
But it was the culture.
Yeah, it was the culture.
It was being surrounded by people who were positive, uplifting, and knowing that just because this is where they were today doesn't mean that's where they're going to be at tomorrow. And I think if you put yourself in that culture, whatever you're doing, whatever you're passionate about, or whatever you're working on, you're now going to vastly accelerate your growth.
Yeah.
And that's a game changer right there.
And to emphasize on that, because people hear this, and I've heard this conversation, but to get practical, even just for myself, with content, like that's the biggest thing. I make it so I can encourage myself and hold myself accountable and share people my process and progress. That's my biggest priority. And number two, when it comes down to what was I about to say?
Don't lose it. Come on.
Yeah, I freaking
go
lost
in.
It. Hold on. Hold on. Yeah, I lost it.
It's all good.
I had it. I was trying to hold it.
It'll come back like 5 minutes
I was
from
trying
now.
to hold it. No, it's okay. No, I don't know. How long would you have? I'm thinking maybe like.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know we had came in, so I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
No, just going off of that. Like my biggest thing, I don't know. I just go off that topic. So when it comes to like sharing content, I share it to hold myself accountable and then emphasize to be able to move one step in front of the other. You don't have to want to build Mount Everest. It's not about building. Like, for example, when I like work out and people are like, oh my God, I can't work out with you. It's not even like I work out for myself and it keeps me, keeps me sane, and it sharpens my sword for me to be able to conquer the day and slay my dragons, because everyone's got trials and tribulations. There's things that I want to do, like example, like the biggest emphasis on resources when it comes to finances is not a car. Sure, I may have a nice car at some point, or a better car, or even then it's so funny because like it's so interesting to hear people talk about the new phone. Like that's so out of my paradigm of like this is the iPhone 13 or 12, and I got it back in 2021. And people are like, you still have the 13? Like, what versions now? Like the 15 or 16?
So I had to buy the 15. I had the 11, and then I dropped a stapler on it. And I was mad. It was like the front-facing camera, and I'm the same as you. I'm just like, if the phone works, why am I going to go spend $1,200 on a brand new one? Like, I'm a finance guy.
Yeah.
$1,200, like my iPhone works. So I'm the same as you. So I'm at a 15, but I had to get a 15. So
I don't know. I bring that up to emphasize, like, if you're like you were talking about, if you're just keeping up just to keep up, like if you need to start questioning that. Like if you are doing that, and I say if you are buying stuff because it's a new thing, but you aren't satisfied where you're at, you need to start questioning, you need to start questioning like how you can make a different or better move. Like if you are doing that and that is that's aligned with who you are, then that aligns with you being fulfilled. By all means do it. But there's a lot of people that might be listening to this that might be getting a new iPhone, that might be getting new this or that, and they're not fulfilled of where they're at in life. That's when you got to have a conversation like, how can you reallocate those resources? And that goes into, I always talk about business owners. I always say, if you need to, I made a post on it. I was like, if your Netflix narrative that you're consuming needs to match of how much content you're putting out for your business. If you're watching the Netflix series and it takes 8 hours but you want to grow your business, how much effort are you putting into the content based around your product or your services? Right. Because it happens too often, and I've had meetings, at least on my side of things, where people want to grow their business and they're like, do I have to make content? I'm like, well, why wouldn't you want to? Why wouldn't you want to tell the story of your business or your service, but watch the news 8 hours of the day, or watch Netflix of your favorite show, or you give praise to a football team? Like, I'm a Lions fan and it's my guilty pleasure, but I always feel this deep passion and guilt of, I got to put that hours back into my business. Why aren't you investing that time? Those are the questions you have to have with yourself, for yourself, because it's going to be a trade-off. If you want to be the lowest of the low, that's a trade-off. You want to be the best of the best, or better than you were yesterday, there's going to be some form of trade-off.
Sacrifice.
It's going to be some type of sacrifice, some type of something you have to give to get.
One of the biggest things that I heard, you know who Dan Bilzerian is, I'm sure.
Yep.
So going back to the keeping up with the Joneses, because that's one of the big things that we see on like Instagram. You'll see all these influencers that'll put things out, and it's like they're on vacation and they got these nice cars and all this other stuff. And subconsciously, a lot of people look at that and they go, I need to have that too. Yeah. But is that really what makes you tick? Like, is that really what's going to satisfy you? And Dan Bilzerian said this, and when he said it, I was like, that's it. And it was one of those things. So what he said was, he said, people think that money buys happiness. And he goes, I'll be the first one to tell you that it doesn't. And he goes, let me give you an example. He goes, I have the ability to buy whatever I want whenever I want. So if the newest Lamborghini comes out, I can go there tomorrow and go buy the newest Lamborghini. And I'll be fulfilled for probably 2 weeks when I'm driving that car and having fun and all that other stuff. But now I'm looking to fill that happiness again. So I need something new. So I need a new car. But guess what? The new Lamborghini, the next one, is not going to come out for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So now I'm trying to fill this happiness with a physical object or something monetarily that can't fill it.
Yeah.
So it's like you'll always be chasing something that's eluding you if you're focusing on, you know, I have to have the monetary aspect or the material aspect or what have you. That's in most cases not what makes people tick. And usually, at least what I've noticed in myself is when I first started in business is I was at a point where I'm like, I'm going to get to 300 million no matter what. Like that's my financial goal.
Yeah, we all been there.
What I'm realizing is I don't even really know if I want that anymore. What I really want is to be able to do what I want when I want with the people I love. And you can't put a value on, you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I earn really good money and I'm going to continue earning really good money, but it's not about the money. It's about the inner feeling. It's about, here's what makes me tick. This is what actually pushes me, motivates me. And I think that's a big thing is really, again, we've hammered vulnerability on this pod. It's getting vulnerable with yourself and really asking the question, like, what is it that motivates me? What is it that fuels me? What is it that drives me? Because when you find that, the how is completely irrelevant with getting you to where you want to be. And this is something I coach to in finance when I'm sitting with clients is, if we're talking about debt or we're talking about investing, there's a million different ways for you to get where you want to go for paying off debt or investing or buying a house or what have you. There's millions of ways. But that journey starts with a single step, but that step won't show itself until you start asking the question, until you start getting real with yourself, and until you start to figure out, okay, here's how I'm showing up right now. Here's what I have right now, and it's okay that I have this because now I can look at this subjectively and say, okay, I need to make a tweak to this. I need to make a tweak to those habits. I need to start, you know, spending 5 more minutes looking at my finance, or I need to spend $5 less a month or what have you. And now you don't look at this as a massive undertaking of I have 50,000 in debt. How am I going to get out of this? No, you look at it as your next logical step. And then as you take that next logical step, the next one presents itself. The next one presents itself. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, right? So it's working with the faculty you have. Your brain is, you want to work with your brain. If you give your brain too much, it shuts down. It just shuts down. Like psychologically, it's like you have all these problems, all these massive issues. I don't know how to solve them because I have limited information. So your brain just paralyzes you and you do nothing.
To kind of emphasize on the portion of all that you said, if you're listening to this, 2 things that I look for the people that I do business with, who's in my inner circle, because I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and so coming from Detroit, Michigan, and then coming out here unknowingly where I was moving, like again when I came out here, and then moving to Paradise Valley and then Scottsdale, it was craziness. But now after being in that and dealing with so many different individuals, the 2 things that I look for is people that are looking to build, and then they have a great foundation of integrity. Because I've met people that have it all, but they have so much they don't have inside themselves. Then it just shows. It's almost like a ghost where they have a lot that they're just trying to get externally, but it doesn't fulfill who they are internally. And so one thing that I've seen to complement that is somebody that values the progress and the building of something over as opposed to what it can get you, because that is just a byproduct to kind of show you what level you're at. Like we're in the studio and this is a sensational studio. And then I say we get into another studio and then it's like with PBD, or we jump in front of the Super Bowl. Like there's different levels of a byproduct of where it might stand from where you start to where you finish.
Exactly.
And so I have appreciation of where I'm at now, but I'm also appreciative of building on who I am. And so if you can find people like that, like yourself or Ben or myself, and then you can build onto that, then it'll help you. It brings a lot more fulfillment, I've come to find out, of who I am as a person. It really brings a lot more value to myself. And so just from an insight of what you just said, that right there will help a lot of people. If you can just find one person that has a great form of integrity, if you can find a few people that have both great integrity and they're like on a path of building something, like everybody in this room, it's attractive to me to be like, okay, I want to have these people in my life. They have some form of integrity, and they radiate the idea that they want to build something, and they want to build something great, and it could be going from point A to point B or point A to point Z, and that right there is what we need more of.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, I think that's part of the fun of life too, is not knowing what's going to happen next. It's you're taking that single step in faith, and you're basically just saying, this is what I know how to do right now. I have my end goal in mind of where I want to be, but I'm not going to concern myself with that. That's out there, and I will get there eventually. But what I'm going to start with is what I know how to do. And this goes hand in hand with what you talk about when you're working with small businesses or you're just getting into the marketing space, is start with what you know how to do. You build it slowly over time through consistency, because what happens is, I always like to look at it like the comfort zone analogy, where, you know, you're in this comfort zone and then, you know, you want to expand it a little bit at a time. Well, how you expand it is you do something different. You do something small. Right. And then that expands your comfort zone a little bit. And then you do something small, and then something small, and then something small. And you're just constantly implementing things till you get to that big, you know, goal that's out there. But that's part of the allure of really loving life too, is knowing that I'm taking this single step in faith, knowing that the stairway is going to show itself as time unfolds. And that's just how it works every time. You start to see evidence of it as you take that step in faith, knowing that, you know, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's going to work out for me. Like when I lost my job back in August of last year. I think I might have shared this with you, maybe not, but I was working for a major institution, a major bank. At the same time, I was making content, and my content, I wasn't making any money on. I was just basically putting it out as free information for people to understand how money works. And the company found out about it, and they said, hey, you can't make content anymore. You have to make a decision between working for us or continuing to make content. Now think about that. My livelihood is at stake right now, of like, okay, like I have to basically give up my passion in order to maintain my livelihood. But my passion is bigger than anything I've ever done before. So for me, when I had that meeting and sat down with them, it was like a no-brainer. I'm like, you're not going to pay me right now to give up on something that I really, truly care about. Now, I don't know how I'm going to maintain my lifestyle. I don't know how I'm going to maintain the things that, you know, are important to me right now, but I'll figure it out. And it's that faith. It's taking that step in faith, knowing that I know who I am and what I want, and I'm not going to give up on that. And I'll take the step as it presents itself. And now it's like, I'm, you know, I have an investment property, and that's doing better than ever before. And I have more opportunities opening up between this podcast and then working with brands. And
somebody reached out to me the other day on LinkedIn. They're like, I saw you on the podcast with Rick, and I want to learn some marketing. I'm like, oh.
See how that works? And it's just because it's the single step. And I think if you're somebody who is watching right now and you're like, okay, I want to expand, I want to grow, I want to become better in some sort of avenue, what I would encourage is just take the next logical step in front of you. Don't complicate it. It's just whatever your brain comes up with and goes, I should try that, go try it. Just try it and see what happens. If it works and it feels good and it feels like it's in alignment, continue to do it. If you start to do it and you're like, that's not exactly it, then shift and do something different. But just constantly move, constantly get better, constantly add things that's going to help you get
build momentum.
Exactly. And then slowly start getting that positive ball of energy bigger than the negative ball of energy. So Trudeau,
you know,
Trudeau, man.
Hey,
the
more you know, like
shout out Trudeau.